Amos whatever it is, chapter 4. Amos 4, verse 4. This is a great passage if you want to, you can find something in the Bible to tell you whatever you want to hear. Here's a good one. It tells you just go ahead and do whatever you want to do. Whatever it is you've been doing, keep on doing it. Come to Bethel and transgress. At Gilgal, multiply transgression. This is God saying, go ahead and transgress. And bring your sacrifices every morning and your tithes after 3 years. Whew. Preachers would hate to see that. Just tithe every 3 years. Now that was every 3 years they were to tithe. You know where that tithe went? That went to the poor and the needy in your gate. That was not donated to the Levites. That was put in your pocket and you gave that out of your hand to somebody who needed it. Now that's a good thing to do. As Christians, I say, I don't make a big deal. We're in the church age, we don't have tithe. I say that you should, between you and God, give your money where God says to give it. And it's not always going to be at the church. And you're going to get a blessing out of that. Look at verse 5. And offer a sacrifice of thanksgiving with leaven, and proclaim and publish the free offerings. For this liketh you, O ye children of Israel, saith the Lord God. Now knowing God of the Old Testament, that, if you've read all the way up to Amos at this point, he's not usually telling you do what you like. So he's being sarcastic here. God really knows what we want to do, what we've been doing, and he's identifying it here. He's putting his finger on it. I know what you've been doing. Okay, if you want to transgress, do this and this and this. The things you've been doing. Look at Matthew 25. Matthew 25, verse 26. Matthew 25, 26. His Lord answered and said unto him, Thou wicked and slothful servant, thou knewest I reap where I sowed not, and gathered where I have not strawed. Okay, here he's saying, you think of me as a mean ogre. Well, then you should have towed the line a little tighter, if you really thought that. That's what he had been saying, is, God, I knew that you were a mean and austere man, and therefore I hid this money, on the side so that nothing would happen to it, and I didn't earn any money off of it. He said, wait a minute. If you thought I was so mean and austere, then you should have done something. You should have done something with the money. Okay, God's doing the same thing with Israel in Amos. He's saying, you've been doing these wrong things, and I identified that you were doing it. So why were you playing? What's the point of it? If he is God, then we go to, according to the Old Testament sense, you go to the tabernacle and you do all the things you're supposed to do. But if he's not God, don't even show up. Why bring any tithe? Why even show up at all? Matthew, look at verse 12, or chapter 12, Matthew 12. Matthew 12, verse 37. The scary thing to think about is that God hears every single thing we say. And he's recording it. He says here in Matthew 12, verse 37, For by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. Whew. That'll give you a little humble pie every now and then if you just read that. Imagine when we get there and he hits the tape player, plays back what we've said. More than that, he'll play back the thoughts and intents of our heart. Whew. Serious stuff. Amos stands up here to his brethren, the Israelites, and he's telling them, God knows what you've been up to. That's the job of the prophet, is to reveal where the people of God have sinned. We had somebody who was upset because I preached too much on sin. Sin is, you want preaching on sin. You want to be able to identify it. Not so, now, you can become sadistic with it too. and just, woe is me, I'm such a low... No, that's not the point of it. The point of identifying sin is to get rid of it. And then you can identify more. That's the way it goes. Look at Leviticus chapter 7. There were some offerings that you could have leaven in. Here he's saying, bring your Thanksgiving offering with leaven. Now, is that legal or is that illegal? Well, we got to go back to the book everybody loves, Leviticus. I was just telling Chris, I like the book of Leviticus. Most people don't. I'm weird, whatever. Leviticus 7, verse 12. If he offer it for a thanksgiving, then he shall offer with the sacrifice of thanksgiving unleavened cakes mingled with oil, and unleavened wafers anointed with oil, and cakes mingled with oil of fine flour fried. Fried all, it must be in the South. So this sacrifice of thanksgiving is unleavened. So he's telling them to do something that goes contrary to the law he's given. Well, of course, he knows what they've been doing. This was their cutting corners. They said, it's easier for us just to bring down some leavened cakes. That's what we got in the pantry. Why go it? It was a big deal at Pentecost or at Passover. They had to get rid of the leaven. They couldn't have any in their house. That was a big ordeal, so it wasn't normal. For 7 days, the days of unleavened bread. So this Thanksgiving offering should not have had leaven in it. Look at Leviticus 7:13. Besides the cake, he shall offer for his offering leavened bread that's got leaven in it, with the sacrifice of thanksgiving of his peace offerings. So here he's saying there's another thing you can bring, and that is leavened. But you do that with the unleavened. So the Thanksgiving offering is unleavened. There's another offering you can bring that has leaven in it. But if it's identified as a Thanksgiving offering, it must be unleavened. Look at chapter 23, Leviticus 23. Leviticus 23:17. Ye shall bring out of your habitations 2 wave loaves of 2/10 deals. They shall be fine flour, they shall be baken with leaven. They are the first fruits unto the Lord. Now those are wave offerings, and there it's identified that offering can only be with leaven. And that's a special one. It's not Thanksgiving. The Thanksgiving offering was identified as an unleavened offering. Mm-hmm.
Is that wave offering actually means wave or
Yep.
something?
Yep, wave it. Mm-hmm. So these Jews knew what they were doing. They were doing this wrong, and God put his finger on it and said, I know what you're doing. You're being lazy. I mean, really. And really, that's the easiest way to slip into sin is laziness. Because the flesh says it's just easier to do this or to do that. And, we can always get back to doing the leaven, and then they just never did. The other prime example of it is go to 1 Samuel. I probably won't be able to find this fast enough. 1 Samuel. First Samuel 1, verse 3. This is Hannah's husband. He's a Levite. He's of Ephraim. And he goes up, look at this in verse 3. And this man went up out of his city yearly to worship and to sacrifice unto the Lord. The Bible tells us at least in 3 places in the Old Testament, in the Pentateuch, that you're to appear 3 times a year. Here's a Levite just doing it once. It was just easy. Just laziness. That's how we slip into sin. Amos chapter 4, look at verse 6. Amos 4, verse 6. Here's God's dental practice. Amos 4, verse 6. And I also have given you cleanness of teeth in all your cities, and want of bread in all your places. Yet have ye not returned unto me, saith the Lord. Now, you understand, by him saying, I did this and you didn't return, that should have motivated them to return to him. So this is something that is not a good thing. If you got clean teeth, you ain't been eating nothing. And that's what's going on. Remember, they probably did not have toothbrushes back then. I don't think Colgate had been born yet. So cleanness of teeth meant they were not eating well. Famine, not having enough bread. This bread thing is a subject that, of course, is important. The manna was called bread from heaven. And this means physical bread you eat, but it also means more than that. Look at Matthew 4, verse 4. Matthew 4, verse 4. Of course, this is the temptation of Jesus Christ. But he answered and said, It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Okay, so I have a question for you. Who was trying to live on a diet of just bread? Because he says man's not going to live on bread alone. Was somebody trying to do that? Okay, well, we can take a spiritual application of that. The bread that is not from heaven is man-made. And that men try to live on. Look at Facebook. It's everybody's favorite little pet saying, that has no Bible in it. Ezekiel chapter 16. Ezekiel 16, verse 49. Ezekiel 16:49. Behold, this was the iniquity of thy sister Sodom. Okay, now, we're getting ready to hear the downfall of Sodom. And it's not the list that we would normally put on Sodom. Pride. Okay, I can see that one. Fullness of bread. Huh? You got too much bread in the pantry. God says that's your downfall? And abundance of idleness was in her and in her daughters. Neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and needy. Okay, so the literal explanation of that is they had bread because they weren't giving it to the people they needed to. God always gives enough for the body, but he usually doesn't give it evenly distributed. He'll give enough so that I can give some to somebody and get a blessing out of it, but it's enough so that we both have enough. He says right here, they had enough if they had distributed it to the poor that were amongst them, and they didn't. They're being stingy. Now, also, do you think Sodom wanted to hear anything about anything God had to say? Obviously not, just by the name of the city. Okay? So they're getting their advice and their philosophy from man-made philosophers, not the Bible. Okay, that's the bread that'll kill you. Isaiah chapter 58. Isaiah 58, verse 7. I think that this one we hit this morning on the fasting. Isaiah 58, 7. Here's the reason for a fast. Is it not to deal thy bread to the hungry, and that thou bring the poor that are cast out to thy house? And when thou seest the naked, that thou cover him, and that thou hide not thyself from thine own flesh. That is your kinfolk that need help. Okay, the purpose here, he said, of bread was to give it to somebody else who needed it. Kim's good about that. She cooks enough for an army and then makes sure everybody gets something. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to look for a way to be a blessing to somebody else. Now, Israel, that was their purpose. Their purpose was to be a light to the Gentiles. And they didn't do that. They'd become selfish. They were going to keep God for themselves. And, if you hold on to a blessing, it turns into rot. Isn't that what he told them about the manna? There's one day, if you don't do what I say, I'll just turn it into worms. And that's what he would do. Luke chapter 21. Luke 21, verse 34. This is why it's dangerous for a Christian to be in America. Luke 21, 34. Take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness and cares of this life, and so that day come upon you unawares. You know what happens to your... I had a cordless drill. I think I overcharged it. He talked about being overcharged there with surfeiting. That's banqueting. It's eating. Your heart can be overcharged. When you overcharge a product that's supposed to take like your cell phone, it won't accept a charge. Then it drains real quick and you can't fill it back up. That's man. Man does the same thing. If you're getting filled up with the world's imitation junk, you don't think you have room for God's truth. Now, you realize you need it when there's needs. When you're in trouble, we realize, hey, we need God. Come down here and, plug me in. But when the world's been giving you fake trickle charges, you don't realize you need it. And he said right there that's what'll happen. John chapter 6. John chapter 6, verse 5. I always like this story. Then when Jesus lifted up his eyes and saw a great company coming to him, he said unto Philip, Whence shall we buy bread that these may eat? Now, he's tricking him and he knows he's doing it. He's leading him on. Verse 6. And this he said to prove him, for he himself knew what he would do. He didn't say, he wasn't even fair about it. He didn't say, how are we going to get bread for all these? He said, where are we going to buy it? He put the thought in his head, there's going to have to be money spent. He knew nobody was spending any money for it the whole time. But it tells you where your heart is. And for us, the Jews realized that the miracle in the wilderness, God feeding them with manna, was something supernatural. And then when Jesus shows up and does miracles, they say, hey, instead of supernatural, they say, welfare line. Show us another miracle. He's been doing, after this, you read the chapter, after this, he goes through, he's fed the 5,000. Then they come back to him and say, hey, what miracle are you going to do for us to prove to us your God? Moses gave us bread in the wilderness. Hint, hint. He just gave them bread. You need to let that one settle first. John 6, look at verse 32. Then Jesus said unto them, verily, verily, I say unto you, Moses gave you not that bread from heaven, but my Father giveth you the true bread from heaven. And that's the bread that's sitting in your lap. The Word of God. That's true bread. Look at verse 35. Jesus said unto them, I am the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger, and he that believeth on me shall never thirst. We've covered this before. It doesn't mean you'll never hunger. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be fed. Okay, so he said right there, you'll never hunger. Means you'll never have a need to be hungry. He can always feed you. So you go to the Bible and it'll always have something in there for you. Look at Isaiah 55. Isaiah 55. This is my economic plan right here. Isaiah 55:1. It says, Ho, every one that thirsteth, come you to the waters, and he that hath no money, talking to me, Come ye, buy and eat. Yea, come buy wine and milk without money and without price. Wherefore do you spend money for that which is not bread, and your labor for that which satisfieth not? Hearken diligently unto me, and eat ye that which is good, and let your soul delight in itself in fatness. Don't be trying to make everything fat-free. I delight in the fat. Incline your ear and come unto me here, and your soul shall live, and I will make an everlasting covenant with you, even the sure mercies of David. You know what that is? Sure mercies of David was eternal security, but he didn't know he had it. Behold, I have given him for a witness to the people, a leader, and commander to the people. Behold, thou shalt call a nation that thou knowest not, and nations that thou knew not thee shall, I can't read tonight, shall run unto thee because of the Lord thy God, and for the Holy One of Israel, for he hath glorified thee. Now that's what Israel was supposed to be the whole time. He said, you've fallen down, you've not done what you were intended to do. That's going to be Israel in the millennium. All the nations of the earth are going to come to them. And that's where the blessings are going to come from. We've been given that job. We're not replacing Israel. However, right now, the only way for the world, the lost world, to hear is if we give them the message. Paul says, if our gospel be hid, it's hid to them that are lost. We've got it. It's our job. Back to Amos chapter 4. Amos 4, verse 7. This is something that was, we don't understand it nowadays because we go to Walmart and pick our fruit. But if you were a farmer, you depended on the rain. If that harvest didn't come in, you didn't eat. Amos 4, verse 7. And also I have withholden the rain from you, when there were yet 3 months to the harvest. And I caused it to rain upon one city, and caused it not to rain upon another city. One piece was rained upon, and the piece whereupon it rained not withered. I killed your crops. That was intended for them to cry out to God. I think the farmers get close to God. I mean, if they've got any spiritual inclination at all. Because they need him to do something. Man can't produce rain. Now, we can produce water, and it's as good as the minerals that happen to be in it. One of the things that God curses in the tribulation with is the food no longer has sustenance. The water won't have any minerals that heal you, that help your body do the things it needs to. Look at Leviticus 26. Leviticus 26, verse 18. This is a curse that God's already promised them. If you're not listening to what I've got to say, one of the things I do is I shut up heaven so it will not rain. They should have been waking up. He says, and if you will not yet for all this hearken unto me, then I will punish you 7 times more for your sins. And I will break the pride of your power, and I will make your heavens as iron, and your earth as brass. That is, there's no rain coming down, and the ground is parched. And your strength shall be spent in vain, for your land shall not yield her increase, neither shall the streets of the land yield her fruits. What did he curse Cain with? He said, the ground's not going to yield to you her strength. What did he curse Adam with? You're going to have to till the ground. I've planted some thorns and some thistles in there for you to play with. Verse 21. And if you walk contrary unto me, and will not hearken unto me, I will bring 7 times more plagues upon you according to your sins. Amos is telling them, look, the Assyrians are coming. It's bad news. And the Assyrians were mean folk. He's telling them there's more going on than the Assyrian. You remember God talking about no rain? Well, you hadn't gotten any rain, have you? God's mad. Look at Deuteronomy 28. Sometimes life happens and it's nobody's fault, but we should always ask God, is there a reason for this problem? Are you telling me something? I mean, I would rather ask him and he say, no, it's just, you got to learn to get through this, than to get to heaven and him say, well, I tried to show you, I shut off the rain. Deuteronomy 28:23. And thy heaven that is over thy head shall be brass, and the earth that is under thee shall be iron. Whew. You know what he called it, Egypt? The iron furnace. Iron is never a good thing. In Daniel chapter 3, I believe it is, Nebuchadnezzar's image, those feet are iron mixed with clay. Clay being men and iron something satanic. Look at verse 24. Deuteronomy 28:24. The Lord shall make the rain of thy land powder and dust. From heaven shall it come down upon thee till thou be destroyed. Whew. Now, God was really doing this. It was apparent. In the Old Testament, these things were very clear. Now, beyond it being clear from God, the heathen knew it was clear. That's what they did, was they prayed to fake, phony gods and asked them to do all of these things. And for Israel, it's happening. In fact, the pagan kings come in there and say, I was anointed by God to be your destruction. And they were. 1 Kings chapter 8. 1 Kings 8, verse 35. And when the heaven is shut up, and there is no rain, because they have sinned against thee. Okay, so Israel should have, every time they went out and there was no forecast for rain, they should have been asking, is it because we sinned? Okay, because that was one of the causes for no rain, is sin. If they pray toward this place and confess thy name and turn from their sin when thou afflictest them, then hear from heaven, so forth, so on. That's what we find Daniel doing. In Daniel chapter 9, he's praying toward Jerusalem. And he's confessing everybody's sin. Not just his, everybody's. And that's the formula that Solomon laid out. Well, right here it's connected to no rain. Look at 2 Chronicles. 2 Chronicles 7. 2 Chronicles 7. Here's the verse everybody loves. I'm going to show you the context to it. 2 Chronicles 7, we'll start in verse 13. If I shut up heaven that there be no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence among my people, if my people which are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. How's he going to heal the land? He's going to turn the rain back on. That's right. The context is, I've made it obvious to you I'm cursing you for sinning. Sin always carries a curse. And that's what Amos was trying to stress to them. He's saying, go ahead, sin some more, and God will just keep cursing you some more. Tough message. Isaiah chapter 5. Isaiah 5, verse 6. These are some happy verses tonight. I don't know. We're going to go home and cry. He says, Isaiah 5, verse 6. And I will lay it waste, and it shall not be pruned nor digged, but there shall come up briars and thorns. Okay, we know from Genesis chapter 3 that this is a curse, briars and thorns. And I will also command the clouds that they rain no rain upon it. Rain. Rain's a curse. What did Elijah do when he cursed Ahab? Shut off the rain. No rain. That's a number one way that is affecting humans. If we don't see rain, you know, California's got the water, what do they call it, where they ration out water, and they got the droughts, and yeah, the well, somebody out there told me they've got all kinds of big lakes and things that they could use, but they won't do it because there's minnows in there that are protected. And
That sounds like California.
yeah. So they've kind of cursed themselves. Look at Jeremiah 5. Jeremiah 5, verse 24. I think that God is amazed at how stupid we are. I mean, really? You can just look back at your own life and be amazed at how stupid you were, points. He's saying, I've cursed them. They're seeing how hard this is, and yet they're not turning to me. They know the formula and they won't do it. They refuse to. Jeremiah 5:24. Neither say they in their heart, let us now fear the Lord our God, that giveth rain, both the former and the latter rain in his season. He reserveth unto us the appointed weeks of the harvest. He's like, they should have woke up. Harvest is coming up, but they won't do it. I don't know what the problem is. I guess they need some locusts. Add more to it. Look at verse 22. No, I didn't tell you the right chapter. Jeremiah 14:22. Jeremiah 14:22. God at this point has said, look, okay, it should have been plain to you, but since it's not, I'll come down there and tell you in plain English. Of course, it wasn't English, but in plain English, what's going on. Here it is, verse 22. Are there any among the vanities of the Gentiles that can cause rain? Can any of these magic potions that the wicked people are doing produce rain? Has any of their rain dances worked? Okay then. Or can the heavens give showers? Art not thou he, O Lord our God? Therefore we will wait upon thee, for thou hast made all these things. God controls the rain. I had somebody tell me that rain was the synthesis of the sun evaporizing water from the oceans. No, rain comes from heaven. God controls the heaven. Now, he may do it through evaporizing or, condensing or whatever else he wants to, but it comes from him because it's not steady. We've always got the ocean out there. So how come we don't always have rain? Because he decides when he's going to turn it on or turn it off. Look at Haggai 1. That's a fun book to find. Haggai 1. Haggai 1 verse 10. They weren't getting the picture with rain. And so he said, well, I'll up the ante just a little bit. He says, therefore the heaven over you is stayed from dew, and the earth is stayed from her fruit. Whew. That's got to be nothing but just a dust bowl right there. When you don't even get any dew on the ground. Whew. Now, I don't live out west, and I wouldn't want to, but out there they're used to the dust. But here he's saying, yeah, I don't want anything. Well, we got that red clay junk. That's about as bad as dust, It sticks to everything. But here he's saying this dust is just going to permeate because I'm going to shut off even the dew. So you won't get any moisture at all.
No Mountain Dew.
No Mountain Dew, that's right. Who wants that? Revelation 11. Revelation 11 verse 6. In the tribulation, the two witnesses, Moses and Elijah, or whoever you want to make them, Moses and Elijah are going to show up, and they're showing up with the same Old Testament message. If you don't do right, God will curse you. And they're going to be the instrument God uses to curse people. Revelation 11 verse 6. These have power to shut heaven, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy, and have power over waters to turn them to blood, and to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they will. Better get on their good side. I'm not going to be around for it, so. Amos chapter 4, verse 8. And I think this will be our last verse. Amos 4, verse 8. Amos 4:8. So 2 or 3 cities wandered unto one city to drink water, but they were not satisfied. Yet ye have not returned unto me, saith the Lord. He keeps saying, I did this and you wouldn't return. I tried this and you wouldn't return. He didn't have to do that. Romans chapter 1 is a litany of the things God does, how God turns a man over to more and more wickedness. He puts it in his path in order to make him wake up. It's not because God's mad at him and just wants to crush him. No, he's trying to wake him up. He's doing the same thing with Israel here through Amos. Look at Isaiah 41. Isaiah 1 verse 17. The scary thing about this is, what if we lived back then? Isaiah 41, 17. 41. What did I say? Oh. Yeah, there's no telling what I say. The scary thing is, if we had lived back then, we'd be suffering for somebody else's sin. And that doesn't seem just, does it? The fathers don't suffer for the children, and the children don't for the fathers. Well, guess what? We wouldn't be if you just do right. It's still individual. Even though he may punish a nation, any individual who will live right, God will see to it they're protected. That's going to be probably important in the next 5 to 10 years in America. The way we're heading, it's going to be rough. But as Christians, God will protect you if you'll do right. Isaiah 41, 17. When the poor and needy seek water, and there is none, and their tongue faileth for thirst, I, the Lord, will hear them. I, the God of Israel, will not forsake them. So even though God has to curse nations, individuals can apply for the curse or not. It's up to you. Just follow God, and even though he may be cursing a whole nation, he'll still protect his people. Look at Jeremiah 14. Jeremiah 14, verse 2. Judah mourneth, and the gates thereof languish. They are black unto the ground. The cry of Jerusalem is gone up, and their nobles have set their little ones to the waters. They said, Jerusalem has no water. Send your young ones out. Let them, they love to explore. See if they can find some pool of water somewhere we don't know anything about. Here's what happened. They came to the pits and found no water. They returned with their vessels empty. They were ashamed and confounded and covered their heads. They're going to the cisterns. A cistern is like I said, a pit. It's a rock that has an opening in it that rain gathers in. Now that's not the ideal drinking water. That's probably full of bacteria and mosquitoes and everything else, but they're so famished for water, they'll get it anywhere they can get it. He says, you've forsaken me, the fountain of water, living water, and you've hewn you out cisterns, broken cisterns that can't even hold water. Bad news. Look at Ezekiel 14. Ezekiel 14, 16. This is Israel on God's rationing plan. Ezekiel 14, 16. Moreover, he said unto me, Son of man, behold, I will break the staff of bread in Jerusalem, and they shall eat bread by weight, and with care, and they shall drink water by measure, and with astonishment. So there, did I tell you the wrong address again? Ezekiel 4, verse 16. Ezekiel 4, verse 16, yeah. Just memorize the book of Ezekiel and you'll know where I am. You're doing good to read the book of Ezekiel. That's a tough book. We were just talking about that. He says here that one of the things he does is he curses the bread. So it does not satisfy anymore. And the water's got to be doled out by ration. Look at Micah chapter 6, verse 14. Micah 6, verse 14. Or whatever reference I start reading. Micah 6, verse 14. He says, thou shalt eat, but not be satisfied. Now, I like the first phrase of it, thou shalt eat. I mean, that's my life verse right there. Until he added the rest, but not be satisfied. And thy casting down shall be in the midst of thee, and thou shalt take hold, but shalt not deliver. And that which thou deliverest will I give up to the sword. Whew. That's how God destroys a nation. One way is he destroys their food. That's why Bill Gates is buying up farmland right now. Because he's got plans for it. And I'll guarantee it ain't because God told him to. Haggai chapter 1. Haggai 1 verse 6. Haggai 1:6. Ye have sown much and bring in little. Now that sounds like the way we go to work, doesn't it? Ye eat, but ye have not enough. So you're eating, you're filling your belly, but it's not satisfying you. It's like popcorn. It's just air. You can eat you can eat a tub of it, and it doesn't do anything. You're hungry again in an hour. That Laura was telling me she likes sushi, and she noticed that an hour later she's starving again because there's nothing in it. It's just bread, not bread, rice. You drink, but you're not filled with drink. You clothe you, but there is none warm. And he that earneth wages to put into a bag with holes. Yeah, that's a good credit card example. This one, I think a credit card's worse than a bag with holes in it. A bag with holes in it, you just lost the money you put in it. A credit card charges you to lose money. Okay, that's where we'll end it tonight. This is Israel, and God is laying the boom down and foretelling what's going to happen. Assyria is going to come in, and Assyria is going to devastate. And at some point, I'll get back to telling you about the bad kings and how brutal they are, the Assyrians.